Moran.
Chairman, thank you very much. Doctors, welcome. One of the first visits that I made after becoming a member of the United States Senate was to the University of Kansas, where I saw basic research in pharmacology, pharmaceutical drugs being developed. And this research seems to me to be so beneficial, and particularly I would highlight an example of where work collaboration between the University of Kansas, NCI, and the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. My question, and it seems to me if we're going to get the best opportunities out of our investment, it is this public-private collaboration that's going to make a significant difference. And I want to talk in at least this round of questions about the National Center for Advancing Transactional Science, NCATS. How do we turn medical discoveries into life-saving and treatments and cures? And my assumption is that's the goal of this new center. Is there a problem? Does that not occur adequately today in the absence of NCATS? So in other words, what role will NCATS play in improving the circumstance if there is a problem to overcome? What are the impediments toward getting that basic research and pharmacology into those to those drugs that save and cure and treat? And is there any incompatibility with what the private sector, what drug companies are doing, and with what NCATS is attempting to accomplish? And then finally, perhaps this is for Dr. Varmus, but what will be the relationship between NCI and NCATS in this process?
Well, thank you, Senator Moran, for a very interesting set of questions, and one that is very much on the minds of many of us as we try to make sure the deluge of basic science discoveries that are pouring out of laboratories move as quickly as possible into their translational and clinical benefits. You mentioned this relationship between Kansas and NCATS and the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society on this drug.
I didn't give you a heads up as to my question, but you seem to have anticipated.
Well, we're very excited about this particular program because it's already now enrolling patients into a clinical trial. I'm going to ask Dr. Insel, who is now the acting director of NCATS, to address some of the questions you've posed about what we aim to accomplish with this newest part of NIH.
Well, thank you, and it's an honor to be able to tell you a little bit about this. I think the first thing to be clear about is that all 27 institutes and centers at the NIH have an investment in this kind of translation, going from fundamental discoveries to making changes in health. That's what we do. What this new entity will do, and as the chairman said before, this new entity is essentially just putting under one roof many programs that were already there. But this is an attempt to develop the tools and to develop some new procedures that make it easier for the other 26 institutes and centers to succeed. So this is a great example. This is a case in which we were interested in taking a compound that was already available in the pharmaceutical industry but not being used very much. It was one that was developed for rheumatoid arthritis, and developing a process by which we could screen all of the drugs that were out there to see whether they might hit new targets that might be helpful for a disease that no one had ever considered before. In this case, a drug for rheumatoid arthritis turned out to be very helpful for a particular form of leukemia. And then we could go to our colleagues in Kansas who have one of the NCATS centers, the Clinical and Translational Science Awards, and get them to begin to develop this, working with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society to have this partnership to potentially develop a new treatment for this form of leukemia.
Let me, I appreciate that story very much, and it was very impressive, again, for me to see in the laboratory. Is there, why does that research not take place elsewhere? Why is the NIH such an important component in bringing these, as you say, in this case, a drug that existed but not, I assume, thought of to be used for another purpose? Is it the NCI that is necessary to get us to move in the directions of this new thought, these new opportunities?
Well, again, I would want to make clear that I think the NCI and many other institutes have a stake in doing just this. The question is whether you want to do it 26 times or you want to do it once. So if in the case of developing, for instance, a procedure to move compounds from the pharmaceutical industry into academic settings, we all do that at all the institutes to some extent. It's a bit of an impediment. It gets complicated. There are templates that can be developed that will make that much easier doing it once instead of doing it multiple times. And there are tools that we need. In this case, this was a particular repository that was developed by the folks at NCATS that collected in one place all of the medications that were out there. So we could do a single screen instead of having to break it up into many different attempts. So NCATS is really an enabler. Essentially, we sometimes call it a catalyst for innovation. It's a way of putting in under one roof many of the tools that all of us need to get things done faster.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you. Dr. Varmus.
Well, let me just add one or two words here. As you've pointed out, Senator, the categorical institutes have a deep investment in translational research activities, and the NCI is no exception to that, with well over $1 billion a year being invested in these topics. In the case of chronic lymphocytic leukemia, we have a major program to look at the basic genetics. It's a disease that is a smoldering disease which becomes acute, and we have very few treatments when the disease enters its acute phase. The intramural program of the NCI came to the Chemical Genome Sequencing Center, a screening center, to help find drugs that might be repurposed, drugs that the company might have little interest in because it's off patent. And we were fortunate to have this drug turn up. Now, this trial we see is emblematic of what NCI might be involved in working with NCATS. In this case, as you've heard, the trial is being sponsored by the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. But I think this is a good example of how the interaction between the NCATS and individual institutes like ours might be very beneficial.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Senator Moran. Senator Pryor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.